"Dad, I'm gay and I have a boyfriend. I can't marry a girl." "I don't like girls," he said slowly. The room became so quiet that Hassan could hear his own heartbeat. His father's face changed. At first he looked confused, and then his expression turned angry. "What are you saying, Hassan?" his father asked loudly. "What nonsense is this?" "It's not nonsense, Baba," Hassan said, his voice trembling. "This is the truth. I've been hiding it because I was scared of how you would feel. But this is who I am. I can't pretend anymore." Hassan was a young boy living in a small, busy town in Nigeria. He was just 15 years old, but he already felt the heavy weight of his parents' dreams on his small shoulders. His father, Mr. Hakim, and his mother, Mrs. Aminat, worked very hard every day. They didn't have much, but they hoped that Hassan would grow up to become successful and make their lives better. "Hassan, you're so smart," his mother would say, looking at him with hope in her eyes. "One day, you will be better than all those kids we see on social media." Hassan always nodded when they talked about his bright future, but deep inside, he wasn't sure if he wanted the same things they did. Sometimes he wished they would ask him what he wanted, but they never did. One day, Mr. Hakim and Mrs. Aminat made a big decision. They sold some of their belongings, things they cared about, to send Hassan to a famous boarding school. They believed this school would give him the best chance to succeed. "We're doing this for you, Hassan," his father said, as they handed him a new smartphone. "You have to work hard and make us proud. No excuses." Hassan nodded again. "Yes, Baba," he said quietly, but his heart felt heavy. When he arrived at the school, Hassan felt very small and out of place. The other boys wore fancy clothes and walked like they were kings. They spoke loudly and laughed freely while Hassan stood in the corner, unsure of what to do. One day, a boy from the school smiled at him. "Hey, new boy, what's your name?" "Hassan," he said shyly. "Stick with us, Hassan," the boy said. "We'll show you how to have fun." For the first time in weeks, Hassan felt like someone cared. He started following the group of boys around, laughing at their jokes and doing whatever they told him to do. A few weeks later, one of the boys said, "We're going to a movie concert tonight. You should come." Hassan didn't know what a movie concert was, but it sounded like fun. He smiled and said, "Okay," feeling excited to go out with his new friends. When they arrived, Hassan immediately felt something was off. The place was dimly lit, and strange music played softly in the background. Men were standing in small groups, some of them holding hands or standing so close their faces nearly touched. Hassan noticed one man leaning in to kiss another, his hand resting lightly on the other's waist. Hassan's confusion grew when one of the boys he came with put an arm around another man and laughed softly, their faces inches apart. Another boy from the group sat on a man's lap, playing with his shirt collar while whispering something that made the man smile. The air felt heavy, and Hassan's stomach churned. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but it felt strange and deeply uncomfortable to him. He didn't like the way the men were looking at each other or how freely they touched. "I need to leave," Hassan whispered to himself, his chest tightening with fear and confusion. Without saying a word to anyone, he turned and ran out of the building, his heart pounding hard as he put as much distance as possible between himself and the place. When Hassan went home for the holidays, he wanted to tell his parents about what had happened. But every time he tried to talk, his father would say, "Hassan, excuses won't get you anywhere. You just have to try harder." His mother added, "We've given up so much for you, Hassan. Don't waste this chance." Hassan felt like no one wanted to hear how he really felt, so he stopped talking about his feelings and started spending more time with the boys at school, even though he knew they weren't good for him. By the time Hassan turned 24, he was not the same happy boy he used to be. On the outside, he smiled and acted like everything was okay, but inside he felt sad, lonely, and scared. He was hiding a big secret, and it made him feel like he was carrying a heavy load every day. One quiet evening, after dinner, Hassan sat with his parents in the living room. The TV was on, but no one was watching it. Hassan sat quietly, looking at his phone, while his father, Mr. Hakim, put down his newspaper and looked at him. "Hassan," his father said, breaking the silence, "why don't you ever talk about girls? You're old enough now. Are you seeing anyone?" Hassan's heart started beating very fast. He had always known this day would come, but he wasn't ready for it. He swallowed hard and looked down at his hands. "Baba," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." His father raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" he asked. Hassan took a deep breath. His hands were shaking. "I don't like girls," he said slowly. I'm gay." The room was silent except for the ticking clock on the wall. Hassan stood in front of his parents, his face filled with frustration and sadness. His father, Mr. Hakim, paced back and forth, while his mother, Mrs. Aminat, sat on the couch, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "Hassan," his father began, his voice sharp and disappointed, "this is not how we raised you. How could you turn out like this? A man is supposed to marry a woman and build a family. This is unacceptable." Hassan clenched his fists and took a deep breath. "Baba, stop saying this is not how you raised me. Do you even remember how you pushed me into this?" Mr. Hakim stopped pacing and stared at his son. "What are you talking about? How did we push you into this?" Hassan pointed at his father, his voice rising. "Do you remember when I started hanging out with that peer group in school? The ones who were always talking about being free to be yourself. You encouraged me to join them. You said they were good kids, that I could learn discipline and focus from them. Do you remember that?" His mother looked up, confused. "Hassan, are you saying your friends made you like this?" "Yes, Mama," Hassan said, his tone sharp but pained. "But it wasn't just them. It was you and Baba who told me to be like them. You always said, 'Hassan, look at how respectful they are. Look at how they dress. Why can't you be like them?' You wanted me to copy them so much that I started spending all my time with them. And that's when I realized who I am." Mr. Hakim's face tightened, his voice defensive. "We didn't tell you to become this. We wanted you to learn good behavior. Not what, Baba?" Hassan interrupted, his eyes blazing. "Not to find out who I really am? Not to be honest with myself? You encouraged me to spend time with them. And when I started feeling different, I tried to talk to you, but you shut me down. Every time I came to you, you brushed me off. 'Don't talk nonsense, Hassan,' you'd say. 'Just focus on your studies.' Now you're blaming me? Now you're calling me a disappointment? How is that fair?" His mother's hands shook as she held her tissue. "Hassan, we didn't know. We thought we were helping you. We didn't mean for this to happen." "Well, it did," Hassan said, his voice firm but calmer. "And I don't regret it. I love who I am. I'm not ashamed anymore, and I won't let you make me feel like I'm broken." Mr. Hakim slammed his hand on the table. "You don't regret it? Hassan, how can you stand there and say that? Don't you know what this means for our family? People will talk. They'll shame us." Hassan laughed bitterly. "Oh, so this is about what people will say, not about me, your son, and how I feel. You care more about strangers than about my happiness." "Don't twist my words, Hassan," his father snapped. "We're worried about you. We want the best for you. This is not the best." Hassan took a step closer, his voice softer, but no less determined. "Baba, you don't know what's best for me. You think marrying a girl is the answer? Let me tell you something. Girls aren't loyal. I've seen it. I've watched friends get hurt by women who lied, cheated, and left them broken. I've seen marriages fall apart because people were forced into roles they didn't want. That's not the life I want." His mother shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "But Hassan, not all girls are like that. You can find a good woman, someone who will love you." "I've found love, Mama," Hassan said, his voice steady. "But it's not in the way you imagined, and that's okay. I'm happy with who I am. For the first time in my life, I'm not pretending to be someone else. Isn't that what you've always wanted for me? To be happy?" Mr. Hakim looked away, his hands on his hips, his face conflicted. Hassan stepped back, his voice growing quieter. "I just want you to see me for who I am, not for who you want me to be. I tried to be the perfect son, but it wasn't enough. Now I'm being myself, and it's still not enough. What do you want from me?" The room was silent again, but this time it wasn't heavy with anger. It was filled with thought. His parents exchanged glances, unsure of what to say. Hassan took one last deep breath and said, "I love you both. I always have, but I can't keep fighting for your approval. I've learned to love myself, and that's what matters most." With that, Hassan walked out of the room, leaving his parents to sit in the silence of their thoughts. What do you think Hassan's parents should do next? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you, share it with someone who might need it. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Thank you for watching.